you're assuming because somebody can take the vaccine, won't get COVID, which, by the way, I don't need to play the clips for you to see it, where everybody said, hey, if you get it, you're not going to get, if you take the vaccine, you're not going to get a Rachel Maddow, Joe Biden. I can give you Fauci. I can give you, and you've seen these clips before. It's not like you've never seen it before.
Yeah, what happened
they were wrong.
Hold on. So,
this man is struggling. They were wrong, bro.
What do we know about the vaccine today that we didn't know while we were all testing it in America, taking it? What have we learned now?
What do you mean testing it on America? There were tests before it was released.
9 months is not a long time to test.
No, but it was tested.
Yeah, but 9 months. The average is 30. The average is 5 to 10 years. I mean, 9 months is not enough.
Okay, so you have to say
test.
no. You have to ask. Hold on. It was tested in trials. Okay. By the way, I'm not claiming to be the expert on all this. I read all the same things you have, but I'm a scientist, so I read it as a scientist. Okay. There were trials. That's what the point of phase 1, 2, 3 trials are all about. They are tested enough to get data on how to then advise the larger population. Yes, it was tested. For you to say it wasn't tested is a gap between your...
I mean, they were tested, but what about them long-term studies and reviews? That's a crazy thing to force on people without that, don't you think?
Your awareness and understanding how things work and what actually happened. It was tested. If you want it to be tested on millions of people instead of thousands, you can put in for that. You can say, I don't want this unless it's millions. That's okay.
Totally fine with me.
Okay.
I'm okay with that.
That's fine. So based on that, do you say, let's keep testing it while the virus keeps spreading? Okay? Right. So this is the contest between the information you have available to you at that moment and what's going on outside the lab. People are dying. Hospitals are becoming overloaded. So, do you say, we have good data on the 1,000, it's not yet at 1 million in case you wanted 1 million. Are you going to say, let's still do it let's wait another 6 months so we get another 1 million in here? Will you do that as a public health professional?
No, I would have said, allow the individual to still have a choice that's okay with 1,000 instead of a few million.
Exactly.
Leave the person have the choice. Not force him to take it or else you're going to get out of the Marines, and you've been doing this for 14 years. Not force him to take it or else you have to quit your job as a nurse.
There's a public health
force versus choice.
There's a public health contract that you have signed implicitly as a citizen of a country where in part we depend on each other for health, our wealth, our security, and the like. And that contract is, in the best scientific evidence available at the time, if you do not get vaccinated, you will put other people in this organization at risk, and that organization does not want to take that risk. So you do not have this job anymore if you decline it.
Yeah, man, I got several problems with this, man. One is he's speaking about this as if there wasn't any contrary opinions at the time. There wasn't an option for another side. And if I'm wrong, correct me. But I always thought that the very definition of the word science was the question. He also admitted this was not his area of expertise. Fair enough. Can't crucify him for what he doesn't know, but he's speaking kind of strong.
So with any public health decision, there has to be a consequence to you not participating in that social contract. Is it your job? In some cases it was. But no, we're not going to have the army bust into your home and force a needle into your shoulder. That's not going to happen.
We pretty much did that.
Well, only put your job at risk, yes.
Yeah, 67% of Americans took the COVID. That's force. That's not a choice. That's a lot of force and coercing and pushing going on. But you can't go to the school unless you're vaccinated against mumps. I think that's bullshit.
That's a different country.
Yeah. But
okay, would you want a country?
No, America is supposed to be the one that offers the most freedom.
This is the one country that's not supposed to happen. What are you talking about, bro? At least that's what I've been told. I could have been lied to, and it wouldn't be the first time. But this is the one country that's not supposed to happen.
That's what America's supposed to be.
Yeah, okay, so watch.
So for example, if you use that argument, somebody may say, well, freedom of choice. I want to choose what I want to do with the body. You're right.
What body?
if you want to get an abortion. It's your choice.
Your own body. Your own body.
If
Sorry.
you want to get an abortion, get an abortion. If I want to get the vaccine, I get to choose. So you can't force. If I can't force you to get an abortion, you shouldn't be able to force me to get
Because it's not about you. It's about people you interact with, and that's the social contract of public health.
I hate to be this guy. I can make the same argument for the suspension, though. That same argument's been made for the suspension, but it's not enough to force. You understand what I'm saying? I don't recall signing a social contract.
Every citizen is bound by the social contract. You live in a country knowing what's expected of you and what the punishments are if you don't follow the rules. If you really don't like the terms, most states do allow you to leave. And I know what you're going to say. I never signed a social contract. But that doesn't matter. When the bill arrives in a restaurant, you have an obligation to pay even though you didn't sign anything. It's the same kind of thing with the social contract. By staying in a country, at least after you're old enough to leave, you're agreeing to abide by the rules and you're granting permission to have certain kinds of force used against you if you don't stick to those rules.
Hang on a second. The restaurant boss gets to set the rules because he owns the restaurant. It's being the owner of a thing that gives you the right to say who gets to use it and how.
There was a philosopher and a political theorist by the name of Agamben. Man, you can't be throwing these names at me, bro. You know I can't read. That predicted the whole jab situation, and when the virus pulled up in his next book was basically summarizing in What Did I Tell You? If you were looking, you saw the writing on the wall. That's the biggest example of how in bed the government is with these corporations that run everything. He spoke about the body becoming a medical host for the state, and it's really creepy, the accuracy of how he described it.
We don't even know if the vaccine worked or not at the time.
Right.
That's what the trials are, dude. That's why these trials. Are you missing data out there?
But let me ask you a question. Are we saying only one type of scientists are right?
No, we're saying that the system in place.
The 16,000 that signed that.
No. The system in place to test vaccines. Yeah. There's an entire system that's in place. That with review boards and all of this,
and the average
that's in place. Now you can say what you can say is, I have a better idea than all these review boards and all these agencies and the CDC. I have a better idea. Here's what you should do, and that would have made everything better. Okay, you can put forth that idea, but what I'm saying is
every idea like that was silenced though, because people will talk about this stuff like it didn't happen. As a matter of fact, everything that they said it would be in the beginning turned not to be true, and they backpedaled that joint in real time. Like, we watched it happen. Mercy.
shot. We've got to make sure we clarify that with people. It has nothing to do whether or not it's effective. We know it's highly effective. Highly effective.
It's like boiling a frog. You take a frog and you throw it in a pot of boiling water, that joint will jump right out. Skin falling off and everything, it'll jump right out. If you put that frog in a pot of water and just set that joint to heat slowly and just slowly turn up the heat, it'll die before it even notices the heat's there. That's what happened to us. Look, my biggest issue is we're acting like this was, without a shadow of a doubt, this was fact, this was science, this was true, while we watch every other scientific opinion opinion outside of the narrative gets silenced. My job was definitely on it. They were really laying people off. Oh, I definitely got the axe. And the crazy thing about it was everybody around me was like getting fake vax passes or whatever cards. And I was just like, man, I don't really want to risk it. Like, usually I'm not above trying to fool a corporation because I have no... But I was just like, for some reason deep in here, I was like, man, I can't do it. A lot of people talk about the coup in the independent talk shows, but all of them were classified as right-wing extremists. That to me was crazy, how quickly that label got slapped on there. I was like, So every single person that doesn't agree with what you think is now a right-wing extremist. This is a dangerous precedent. It's a dangerous precedent.
In a case where you can contaminate someone else, it's not about you. It's about the collective
You're assuming.
health.
You're assuming because somebody can take the vaccine, won't get COVID, which, by the way, I don't need to play the clips for you to see it, where everybody said, hey, if you get it, you're not going to get, if you take the vaccine, you're not going to get a Rachel Maddow, Joe Biden. I can give you Fauci. I can give you, and you've seen these
Literally
clips before.
everybody.
It's not like you've never seen it before.
Yeah, what happened
They were wrong.
Hold on. So,
This man is struggling. They were wrong, bro. He had a stroke.
The strain evolved, okay, so that the vaccine that prevented you from catching COVID was tuned to the variant of COVID at the time the vaccine was designed, okay? Over time, there were variants that arose. The vaccine provided partial protection against the new variants, enough to keep you from dying statistically, and to basically keep you out of the hospital, allowing other people with more severe problems to get the hospital attention they required. And so then they would develop a subsequent, the booster and a subsequent mixture of the vaccine. This is what happens every year with a flu shot. They look at how the flu has evolved from one season to the next. And what's fortunate is Australia tends to get the variant of flu before we do, because they get their winter in our summer, and then so we study that, have a forward projection for it. So these annual flu shots are precisely out of the same idea of how this occurs.
How long have those been tested, though? For years. COVID vaccine hasn't been tested for it. It was something we just came out. But let me.
I don't know what point you're making, other than it was tested. You might
9 months is not enough.
You might prefer. No, it's not a matter of time. It's a matter of.
It absolutely is a matter of time. Look, I grew up in the 90s. Y'all remember the antidepressant boom? They was busting them joints out like hotcakes, Ritalin, Zoloft, woo, woo, woo. We're now old enough to see those class action lawsuits.
The Food and Drug Administration has issued multiple warnings about the risk of birth defects among children whose mothers took a class of antidepressants known as selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, or SSRIs.
Across the United States, a substantial number of physicians have prescribed the drug Prozac to individuals, including pregnant women, for the treatment of depression.
Researchers have found that common antidepressants like Zoloft, Paxil, and Prozac are linked to serious birth defects when they're taken during pregnancy. These can include heart defects, lung defects, clubfoot, and cranial defects, just to name a few.
Call Johnson, Johnson & Johnson, and Johnson & Johnson. There's many drugs that were pushed off and peddled by doctors through pharmaceutical companies that we no longer use because we have the long-term data.
It's a matter of how many, yes, time matters, but the number of people is paramount. That's the most important thing. Okay, you don't test it on 10 people. You test it on as many people as you can. And
sure.
I think it was thousands, but
is it fair to say
me.
that some of the side effects we may not know for 5, 10, 15, 20 years? You can't, like, they can't say we know 100% the side effects 10 years from now. How are you going to know that?
Yeah, okay. So, no, of course, we can't know that.
So then all I'm saying is...
Watch. We can't know that.
Okay.
But watch. So I have a whole chapter called Risk and Reward in the book, which tries to sensitize people to when they make a decision, what kind of risk are they absorbing relative to what they're rejecting, okay? And we're not very good at that.
That's a fancy way of saying cost of risk analysis, but all right.
At probability and statistics, or analyzing it. That's why TV commercials trying to sell you a product don't just show you data. They show a person speaking of the effectiveness of the product. A single person. I lost 50 pounds. The testimony of an individual should be irrelevant to you relative to the entire set of people who have done it. And you want to look at those statistics, but we're not good at that. And advertisers know that. So they show the testimony of an individual,
right,
which is hugely potent in a civilization where we don't think statistically, we think about eyewitness testimony on something. And somehow that is raised to a very high level of influence on our decisions. What I'm saying is, you're not your decision point is not, I'm not going to take the virus because 5 years, 10 years, I don't know what effect it's going to have.
Some may, though. Some may not be comfortable with
Let me
that.
finish the sentence. Okay? So you can say, I don't want to take the virus because 5 or 10 years from now, there could be a side effect that we don't see.
Which is a possibility.
Hold on.
Absolutely.
I'm trying to make a statistical point here, okay? If you say, I don't want to take the virus because it hasn't been tested for 5 years and there could be some long-term side effect that worries me, okay? In that same moment, there's the risk factor of you getting COVID.
Sure.
Okay? Unvaccinated. At one point, 87% of everyone dying in the hospital of COVID was unvaccinated.
At one point, what point, bro? If there was very little people vaccinated at that time, then obviously a lot of people would be passing it unjabbed. COVID had a fatality rate of 5% in people over 65. That's far higher than any adverse effects of the jab. The cost of doing nothing was high. That said, I don't agree with forcing it on people. I know older people right now that are still wearing masks. That's their business. I even think there's a good argument for saying, hey, look, if you are over a certain age and over a certain weight, you might want to go ahead and tap that vein. That's not what we're talking about. Y'all force it on everyone.
Your risk choice is, I'm not going to take it because maybe somewhere down the line something will happen and we don't know what that is, or I will risk getting COVID. And if I get COVID, depending on your age and other things, there's a 3% chance of me dying in the hospital. That's your choice. Yes. Yes. But what I see people doing is they focus on one thing, and that's the foundation of their decision, rather than the other chance. And what happens if you get COVID? Now you get long COVID. Now you can have a taste buds for 2 years or whatever it is for long COVID.
Yeah.
You're on a ventilator in the hospital, possibly dying. Like what? Where is the? So I looked every day once a week. I looked at the statistics. How many people?
Come on, Greg, talk about it. Under 65, it was a 99.9% survival rate. And then you remember when they tried to push it on the kids? Or they're trying to push it on kids? We need to protect the children. We need to protect our children. What kind of people are we if we don't protect our children? 13 kids passed with it. It was like under 20. Do I want any kid to pass? Absolutely not. But we can't pretend like this is like an overwhelming majority. Like this is like a serious problem with that demographic. I'm glad they didn't force it. At that point, I was like, okay, cool. If people want to make a decision, go ahead, do your thing. I'm not mad at you. Go ahead, do your thing. But what's crazy to me is that on some level, I did kind of think, I was like, okay, when this all blows over, people are going to be able to look back and be like, man, that was kind of crazy, right? Maybe enough time hasn't gone by, but that's really not happening. I'm looking like, it just seems like we're living in different worlds when it comes to this thing. Jab became the MAGA hat on the left.
People getting COVID? What's the rate? What's the rate of hospitalization? What's the rate of deaths? Where is it by state?
I had to look at it. My board forced me to look. We're in the business that we have to
they
look at.
should,
Yeah, of course.
because it's data.
Yeah, I agree.
On risk factors.
The risk
Yeah,
of
sure.
people's lives.
Okay,
for
so,
sure.
so nothing is ever zero risk. Yeah, there's a risk that you'll grow a third arm in 10 years because the virus mutates within you.
Should the individual not have the right to say, I don't want to take it because that's
you don't have the right to contaminate someone else. So if you don't want to get shot,
But it doesn't stop you from spreading it. That's the crazy part. How is this a talking point?
Who says that though? But who says that?
it's a social contract in a modern civilization.
I don't have
for
the
public health.
I don't have the right to contaminate someone else. In what do you mean? Like, so what do I do? Stay home all day?
Yeah, or to go to the beach. Yeah, you stay away from other old people who
But
you stay.
Elizabeth Fry shows us what this closure means and what it looks like in the weeks ahead.
With beach chairs backed up and umbrellas put away, the closed signs staggered on the sidewalk paint a clear picture.
Another popular Indiana beachfront will close due to COVID-19. This time it's Michigan City.
I'm Kit. We're live in Pacifica, where the city is getting ready to shut down the beaches this holiday weekend to try and limit the spread of COVID-19.
So Neil, so for me, I'm asking you because I want to know how you process this as a guy that's well-read, smart.
I process the data, and the data.
We didn't have enough data, though.
No.
We didn't have enough data.
At any given moment,
yeah,
there's data for you to make a decision. At any given moment,
sure, the
data is constantly getting better and better.
Yeah.
All right. So, all right. At any given moment, you say to yourself, "Okay, what happens to me if I get COVID? There's a chance I'll get long COVID. I'm certainly out for at least a week, and there's a chance I'll be hospitalized, and there's a chance I'll die."
Mm-hmm.
I take the vaccine, it mitigates this, basically entirely removing the chance that I'm going to die, essentially, at my age group, and I will accept the risk that in 5 years I'll grow a third arm. That's the kind of decision-making that I make. Now, that's just for me, but on top of that, if my workplace says, we don't want you coming in unless you are vaccinated and you might lose your job, I would say, why? Oh, because you could contaminate someone else, introducing a problem in their own health profile. That's the public contract. That's why workers wash their hands in the restaurant bathrooms by law. Yes, they're required to do so because you don't want poop germs in your dinner that they're preparing. Because our evidence showed that that's one of the greatest places you can spread disease.
Get that McDonald's E. coli, it's a bad way to go out.
Now, you want a world where you can do whatever you want and have it influence other people.
I'm not saying that.
You kind of are.
I'm not saying that. All I'm saying is the following. Like, okay, for example, statistics. Have you seen the documentary Died Suddenly? Have you looked at it?
No, I haven't.
Okay. It's an interesting one. It's on I don't know where it's at. You can find it somewhere online. Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
It's got 30 million views. I think it's worth watching. Actually would be curious to know what you say about it once you watch it.
Mm-hmm.
The statistic then showed, like, pre-COVID, 29 people, athletes in Europe died suddenly from heart failure, pre-COVID, pre-taking the mRNA vaccine. Okay. Post-taking the mRNA vaccine last year, 1,500 people suddenly had heart failures in Europe, and 2/3 died. That's documented. That's not like it's a hypothetical, right? Okay, you read statistics like that, then one has the right to say.
Just to be careful. You have to be careful how you speak.
Why be careful now? I'm all for being careful, but I'm saying we picking and choosing when to be careful. I don't know.
Information. So you are describing two events. Okay, you're describing events that had a temporal relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, before you've established a causal relationship. Just be clear that's
100%. I'm not doing that.
Fair enough. It's correlation, not causation.
Okay. All I'm doing is the following. Here's all I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody all of a sudden starts having a breakout, okay,
a breakout of what?
Meaning their skin starts breaking out. You're 26 years old.
Mm-hmm.
You never had a breakout. All of a sudden you start breaking out. And the doctor says, listen, man, what have you been doing differently? Well, listen, for the first time in my life, 6 weeks ago, I started doing Deca, steroids.
Mm-hmm.
Well, okay, that's...
I was on that Deca D-ball, bro. I was running a stack.
Why it implicates it, right? Okay. Hey, if somebody all of a sudden, is having a hard time sleeping at night, I'm having a very hard time. So let's watch your diet. Well, then they notice at 10:30 at night, you're having iced tea and, lemonade, and you add it with this. Well, listen, if we've been doing it for 6 weeks, that's why you're having a hard time. Just drop that. Don't drink that after 2 o'clock. I'm just making, saying, but all I'm saying is, what I want to know is I want to put everything on the table versus saying, no, there's one thing we can't put on the table, and that's the cause of the vaccine. There is no way there could be any negative impact because of the vaccine. That's ludicrous.
No one has ever said that ever about any vaccine.
If you say that, then the question then becomes back for you to say, when COVID first got started, I invited so many doctors to come in to talk about COVID. And then I invited people from both sides. I want both sides. I invited people from both sides. You know which side would never come? The side that was for vaccine would never, ever come because they thought they were above the average person, that they know and the rest of us are dumb. So because of that, they're not willing to come and sit down with scientists. I think that's arrogant. So to me, when I ask you scientific debate, I'm not telling you I'm a scientist. Hey, let me debate with you because I'm smarter than you. I'm not a scientist. I'm a business guy.
Let's do a hypothetical scenario. Hypothetics are, let's assume an actual cause and effect has been established in this case.
Sure.
Which it's not have to see the film to know. I don't know that it's a cause and effect other than a coincidence in time relative to other things that people might have been doing. By the way, alcohol consumption went up during COVID significantly. Okay, and alcohol is
because everybody was locked in the house,
implicated in heart disease. So
depression, anxiety, people staying at home,
kids, opioid
addicts, addiction.
Okay. We're also talking about athletes, right? So maybe the athletes were hitting the booze a little bit harder than normal, but it's a little bit less likely.
So the staying at home wasn't the best decision either.
What I'm saying is, if after the vaccine is available, more people die of heart failure over a time where alcohol consumption went up, as did depression.
That could be an option.
That's right.
That's a very good
point. That's all I'm saying here.
Solid point.
But let's give it to you that the vaccine caused this. Let's just say that, okay?
Yeah.
And add it all up, and you got, what was it, 1,500 post-vaccine?
29 to 1,500.
29 deaths.
29 sports deaths, 1,500.
Thousands of deaths, let's say, okay? Let's say 10,000 even. Let's just do that. Okay. All right. You can estimate how many deaths the vaccine saved during COVID. You can estimate how many deaths the vaccine saved during COVID. Okay? Because you can look at the death numbers drop off as people got vaccinated. It's in the tens of millions.
Is it me? And I know I'm nitpicking a little bit, but is that correlation or causation?
You're describing events that had a temporal relationship, okay, before you've established a causal relationship. Just be clear that that's
100%. I'm not doing that.
A few moments later.
You can estimate how many deaths the vaccine saved during COVID, okay, because you can look at the death numbers drop off as people got vaccinated. It's in the tens of millions.
I'm just saying, let's keep it consistent. Is that correlation or causation?
Again, you can make a decision. Do I not want to die from COVID at this rate that occurred in this world? Or do I not want to die from this complication from the vaccine itself, the heart failure? So make your decision. And so you'll say, I might be in that 1,500, so I'm not going to take. Then you get COVID and die from COVID, right? So you just make the decision.
You know what I would say to that? Well, you know what I would say to that?
What would you say?
Here's what I would say to that. I would say, perfect. Let me take the risk. And thank you for giving it to me that way versus telling me it's one or the other, which is how it was presented.
As long as you are informed fully about what the risks are.
Bro, you just reverse your entire opinion.